everyone, and welcome to Pump Up the Jam. My name is Dominique Wicker, and I'm with the Educational Technology team. Today we have with us Karina Moran, Colleen Carney, and Carrie Emery from Teaching and Learning. And we're going to be talking about all things Jamboard and showing you some awesome strategies and activities that you can use with your students. So before we get started, we are going to show a short video that talks about using Jamboard within Google Meet, and also a new update that has recently been released with Jamboard regarding version history. So let's go ahead and take a look at that video.
Hello class, welcome. Today we are going to be working on a collaborative Jamboard. We're going to do that inside of our Google Meet. So I'm going to go over here and click the three dots in order to share the jam with you. Now I could start a new one, but I'm going to go ahead and choose a template I have from my Google Drive. And it is going to allow me to pick one. I'm going to go ahead and go with this map of the USA because that's what we've been working on. Okay, so notice it gives me the option to give them access to the file. Do I want them to be able to edit it or view? You do need to make that choice here. So I am going to let them edit so we can work on this collaboratively. All right, class, you're seeing the jam now? Uh-oh, I forgot to clear this jam, but I can easily do that by going up here to the top. And now Google Jamboards have version history, just like docs, sheets, and slides. So I can jump back into here and I can see my students have been working hard. So I'm going to jump into this one and I'm going to find the one that doesn't have any labels. There we go. And I'm going to rename this one so I know that this is the one. This is going to be my template. Now I can easily restore this version. And now we have a blank slate for the class to get started. So class, go ahead and start filling in some of the states that you know that you've been studying. And I'm going to click out of here. Oh, I didn't mean to exit out of the jam, but that's okay. Now I can go down into the bottom. Notice it's now attached to this Google Meet. And I can click here, click back into attachments, and go right into my map. And I can see my students are working really, really hard. So this is just another way to use Jamboard inside of Google Meet.
Awesome. So again, today is all about Jamboard, and we're going to be focusing on some activities and strategies to use with our secondary students. So Jamboard is essentially an online whiteboard, and it can be used in three main ways. As a whiteboard, you can use it for group collaboration and also for independent work. So if you don't use it for anything else, use it as an online whiteboard. It's great, especially for those of us who still have students who are virtual. You can use the whiteboard for direct instruction by sharing it in Google Meet, just how Rebecca showed us in that video. You can use it to model a task. And if you're just using it as a whiteboard, whether in Google Meet or if you're in brick and mortar, you can use it on your smart panel as well. You do not need to share this with your students. You can just share your screen or have them have, visible access to the smart panel to be able to see the whiteboard. It's also very helpful for group and collaboration activities. The three ladies today are going to be going through some really, really engaging strategies and activities to use for collaboration with Jamboard. So when we use it for collaboration, you do need to share the file with students, and the easiest way to do this is using Google Classroom, just like you would share any other assignment, Google Doc or Google Slides. You just have to remember to change the sharing settings to edit so that the students can go into one jam and manipulate the content, add content, and contribute. If you don't do that, then they won't be able to do anything. And then lastly, it can be used for independent work. All of the jams that you're going to see today will be available to you as templates in the near future. And you can assign those individually to students, just like any other assignment in Google Classroom. But instead of making them view access only or edit access only, you would actually make a copy for each student And this would allow each student individually to manipulate the content, add content, complete the assignment, and send it back to you for review. So again, the three ladies are going to be going over some great activities and strategies to use Jamboard in these three ways. So I'm going to turn it over now to Carrie and Marie.
Well, good afternoon. I'm excited to walk you through 4 examples of how Jamboard can be used as an effective learning tool to deliver standards-aligned instruction in secondary ELA. Teachers can leverage this tool to engage students before, during, and after reading. Jamboards are a great tool to use in ELA because many of the reading strategies that teachers are already using can easily be made into Jamboards for whiteboard use, independent student use, or collaborative use. For example, this is an anticipation guide that ELA teachers often use as a before reading activity. They help readers activate and connect their background knowledge, create interest in an upcoming topic, and help students set a purpose for what they're reading. An anticipation guide consists of 3 to 10 statements that focus on key information that students need to learn. They should be statements for which students can readily state their own opinions without having to read the text first. Students mark agree, disagree, or yes or no, or true or false. This before reading strategy can easily be made into a Jamboard. Now let's take a look at an example. This is an example agree, disagree anticipation guide with pre-reading statements from the novel Bad Boy, a memoir by Walter Dean Myers. This is an alternative novel unit in our grade 9 curriculum. This Jamboard was created by adding a saved image of the text and the Post-its with the statements. Students duplicate the Post-it notes and drag and drop them under the column that represents their thinking. After students finish reading, it's beneficial to revisit the anticipation guide to see if their initial thoughts and opinions have changed. Students can also use an anticipation guide to respond to how they think the author of a reading selection would respond to the statements, citing evidence to support their thoughts. Now let's take a look at another strategy. ELA teachers know that text coding and annotating help students read actively while processing content information. There's so much more to it than just highlighting or underlining. This strategy encourages students to read and pause to reflect and then annotate using meaningful codes. Teachers have a few options for setting up a Jamboard for text coding. The text can be copied and pasted onto the Jam, or it can be saved as an image and set as the background. This text coding ELA example was created for grade 6 RL 2.4. Students duplicate each color-coded box and then drag and drop them to code the text appropriately for figurative language and meanings using the yellow box, words that impact the text meaning using the blue box, and words that impact the text tone using the red box. It's important for the teacher to model the text coding strategy with the tool first. Students can then complete the Jamboard independently. Now let's look at another strategy. This example shows how students can use more features of the Jam to code and annotate text. Here, students can use Post-it notes to represent symbols or letters. They can use the highlighter to mark up text and the marker or pen to write beside text or over it. Or students can drag and drop transparent circle or square images over the text. Students can also use the Post-its for making notes or comments about the text as they read. And teachers can add comments via Post-its for prescriptive feedback. Of course, there are many ways to code text and use this tool, but the most important aspect to keep in mind is the purpose for reading and alignment to the standards when creating the codes in Jamboard. Let's look at another strategy. This free character notes Jamboard template is especially beneficial for teaching literary text. It pumps up the creativity of traditional note-taking during and after reading. In this grade 9 RL 1.3 example, students use color-coded sticky notes to analyze complex character development and interactions in Romeo and Juliet. This is a great group activity. You can create separate jams or add frames with different character names. Each group works together in the Jamboard to respond to the guiding questions and note the character details on the corresponding color-coded Post-it notes. After completing the reading and activity, the Jamboard can be treated as an after-reading gallery walk, where student groups walk through the Jamboard posters, viewing them like an art gallery. Groups would add a sticky note with a constructive comment to each Jamboard. Teachers might wish to provide sentence starters for comments and discussion protocols for circulating through the Jamboards prior to the gallery walk. Now I have one more suggestion to share with you. This is one of my favorites. The 4 corners post-it is another free Jamboard template that is a great way to incorporate an after reading strategy. 4 corners helps students draw from other students' personal responses. In this grade 8 RI 1.2 example, there are 3 guiding questions. Students are asked to identify the central idea of the passage, how the central is developed, and to provide a 1-sentence summary of the passage, ensuring that all parts of the standard are covered. The students are divided into groups of 4, or it can be modified to use groups of 6. Each group has access to the text and can edit the Jamboard. After reading, students respond to the essential or guiding question on their post-it notes in the appropriate quadrant. Students then discuss the responses of their group, and the group works together to develop one answer, in this case focusing on providing an objective group summary of the text, and will write down on the post-it note in the middle of the Jamboard. The teacher may also wish to have students add more post-its in the middle of the grid for the group to collectively address the other 2 guiding questions as a single response. Now I'm going to hand it over to Colleen, who will demonstrate how to use Jamboard in social studies. But stay tuned because these great strategies can be used in ELA as well.
Thank you, Carrie. As you just said, these strategies can also be used in ELA as well as other content areas, because the first thing that I'm going to share for JAM is another reading comprehension strategy called You Ought to Be in Pictures. As we know, students often ignore text features, including pictures or different images embedded within the text. This strategy enforces the picture really going into that specific image to help them comprehend their reading. So by using this picture, they can visualize and analyze their reading, and that can then help them with their writing after. So I have an example of a picture of Benjamin Franklin and the Declaration of Independence, where now I'm encouraging students to choose one of the 4 items in the image and really analyze what's happening. So whether from the perspective of the pen, the paper, Benjamin Franklin, or the candlestick back there, they're going to then tell the story from the point of view of the object or person they select in the image. So I have an example of some ways students may respond from the different perspectives of those items, right? So the candlestick saying this Declaration of Independence is going to be on fire. So students then post on the Jam. This is the piece that you would share with them in their Jamboard through their Google Classroom, as Dominique shared with you. They would have these jams, and you see that we color-coded it to go along with the items, but that they have the opportunity then to respond from the viewpoint, and then they could see each other's thinking as well, where that's where Jamboard's great for some of that collaborative piece and learning from one another. So that was You Ought to Be in Pictures, a great way to reinforce text features and help with reading comprehension. My next piece is mind streaming, or you may have heard it as like a 1-1 2-minute partner share, or A/B partner talk. But this mind streaming is really great because even as we're socially distancing, we don't have so much of as a shoulder partner anymore to turn and talk to. So we could use Jamboard to still reinforce that collaboration and giving students some time to speak and hear from one another, speak in this virtual setting. So this then is where in mind streaming, student A, the first student, speaks for a minute about a given topic. So you provide a prompt of what they should be talking on. So this could be information that they did in a pre-reading, or this is a post-reading, or this is more of like a pause and reflect on what we're doing now. Student A speaks, student B listens, and then those roles reverse. So in this virtual Jamboard setting, you'll see and that how we could use this strategy. So the first question that we posed was, how would you evaluate a candidate that is running for political office? Student A is going to respond to that question on the left-hand side. And then student B on the right-hand side is going to respond to what student A wrote. So you'll see that example here. So that where they're putting their thinking, the first student puts their thinking, student B responds to their thinking. And this still gives that opportunity to learn from one another and have collaboration using Jamboard. And then my third and final example of ways in which we could do this connects to what Carrie was sharing about annotating text, marking up that text, that you can do that in Jamboard, that this is another great feature. And we're doing that this time with a sample test item. We're going to ask the students to mark up that test item with some prompts here on the right-hand side. So underlining the author, circling keywords, eliminating answers, and then ultimately not only determining the correct answer, but that we put at the bottom box down there, explain your thinking. How do you know that's the right answer? So you'll see a sample here where then we've had a student mark up this text in Jamboard, and that they'll have that opportunity to then explain their thinking. So then you could either see where they went right or maybe where they went left, and that there's some opportunity for some reteaching and support for students there. That's all for social studies, but again, great all content area strategies. I'm going to pass it to Karina to walk you through how you can use Jamboard with math.
Thank you so much, Colleen. Just like my colleagues have shared, Jamboard is a really good tool, and here is some ideas of how you can use it for math. So a notice and wonder example, excuse me. I just have an idea. I have some expressions that have now been evaluated, and students get to see what it is that they notice. Do you notice that each one of them has an X? Do you notice that each one of them has the answer of 12? One great extension to add is equation. You can make math manipulatives for your students to actually manipulate in Jamboard, and I'm going to show you that in a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that I make mention of it, because to write 5x minus 3 in parentheses, sometimes with the typing that we have in the text box available on Jamboard, it doesn't quite look mathematically correct. So equation gives you the opportunity to do that. Next, we have a would you rather example. Would you rather math is actually a website that has lots of different prompts. This one has been linked to a 6th grade for proportions. So would you rather A or B, and why? The students will have to add a sticky note with the name and the reasoning to say, do they want to have 4 packs of 12-pack Cokes for $9 or buy a 12-pack of 12-ounce cans of Coke for $22.50 when it comes in packages of 10. Most of the time, there's not a right answer or a wrong answer. It's a justification that's important to share. And that is mathematical practice number 3, critique the reasoning of others. So that is very, very important. And just like Carrie and Colleen shared, if I create this Jamboard and then give the students access to see each other's answers, it becomes a gallery walk. And here is an example of a gallery walk with independent work that can be turned into group work. This is just a picture of a sample question for geometry. So I will have to put the answer, excuse me. I can mark the answer, and then once I have my answer completed, I can go visit somebody else's work. And I can use, just like Carrie and Colleen were sharing, some kind of symbol to let others know that I visited their Jamboard. I agree with them. I'm not sure, or I have some comments, because we realize that mathematicians discussing with each other are really able to justify their answers and when they went right, or like Carrie said, when they went left. Next, we have using the grid example. So this is a Jamboard that was created by using the set background feature, and it's a grid. And then a picture was added, so then students will have to use the pen tool to follow the transformation on the coordinate grid. This one says a reflection over the x-axis and then the y-axis. So after the students draw those reflections, again, it could be shared with other students to see if they agree or disagree. Now I'm actually going to take you to our Jamboards, because like it was mentioned before, you're actually going to be able to get all these Jamboards ready to go for you. They've been created so that you can copy them. Here's the first Jamboard that was shared from literacy, the first set of them. Here's the one about social studies. And And here's the one for math. So I'm going to try to share with you, but I do know that StreamYard is not able to show us the step that's the final step. So I'm just going to walk you through the parts, and then I'm going to actually provide on our website a video that was created to show you how it actually looks. So for example, here is the jam that I said that I could write these expressions or equations. And if I don't have something that I could copy, I could just open up Equation. It is a Chrome extension that I can open. As you can see, now it opened at the bottom. So now I can actually go to the tool that is called the handwriting tool. And if I write something here, like 3x minus 4, as you can see, once I insert it, I can copy it and paste it. And this is the part sometimes that doesn't want to work. I can try putting it back on the Jamboard by pasting. Now, this is the part that unfortunately is not working just yet, but I wanted to let you know that you can use Equation in your Jamboards. Something else I've tried. If you use MathSpace and you wanted to use some of the tools that they have or the shapes, for example, I could try using a fraction circle. After I make the fraction circle, all I have to do is click on the Insert button, and now it's actually copied, and I will be able to paste it again on the jam. Like I said, StreamYard is not letting us show you that step, but I promise you it works. And what's really cool about it is that once you put it on the jam, then the students can use it even if they don't have this extension on their own Chromebook. If they do download it and add it to the Chrome extensions, then they'll actually be able to use representations to show you their thinking. So that's a really cool way to make sure that the students are not only explaining something, but really showing you what their understanding is. Here's the next jam with the picture of the worksheet that I copied. And something else that I like to teach my students is that I have the example there for them, but I purposely leave it so that they can make it smaller if they choose to, or they can move it around. Because if you make it smaller, then you have more room to actually show your thinking. I do not sometimes choose to make these pictures be the background so that my students can actually manipulate them and discuss and have more room to show their thinking. Here is the one that we talked about, Would You Rather. Again, this is just a picture that came from the wouldyourather.com math. And it's also something that has been created, and it's on our resources for grade 6 and grade 7. And here is the one that we talked about with the tool. I can reflect by drawing and try my very best. And then I can reflect the shape again. And again, you can use, if you would like, Equation has some lines that you can use, again, with an activity like this. The last one that I want to show you is an example called Equivalent Ratios from OpenMiddle. OpenMiddle.com, it's a website that gives you lots of different OpenMiddle problems. And what makes an OpenMiddle problem interesting is that the part of the solution is the least important as the result. What we really want to talk about is how the students came up with those ideas. So Jamboard is a very cool way to manipulate things, especially in the way that we're teaching right now. This one happens to be for equivalent ratios. And if we are using the digits 1 to 9, all I created was Post-it notes. And this asks us to make ratios that you can say are equivalent to 2/3. So I can choose 4, 6. And now that I use those, I am done. I can copy this again by going to the top and duplicating that slide. And now that I have that Jamboard, I can now choose to think, what is another representation of the ratio 2 to 3? Well, I could try to think of another way. If there is not another way, I could explain why there's not another way. Last but not least, I want to remind you, since you are getting all of these Jamboard templates that are already created for you, a very easy way for you to get access to what you need is by using the 3 dots. When you make a copy, what's really interesting is that you can actually name it and put it in one of your folders. So if you only are interested in the math jams, you can delete the social studies and the language arts on this one particular cluster so that you have your jams separated. And then you can continue to edit and copy and make copies of the Jamboards that you want to use with your students, because you do need to remember 49 people at one time on a Jamboard is the number of students that could work on it. So if you have students in different classes, but you know that you're going to have more than 49, you definitely want to make copies of the different Jamboards that you will be working with your students. So those are all the tips that I have. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll try our best to explain more of the important things that we can do with jams. Anyone else has something? I have one more thing that's just a slide because it's something that a lot of us have used, a parking lot. And this is just some of the questions that we can think of, and we want to make sure we answer them. How can we use the templates? We already gave you them. How many students can work in a Jamboard? We said 49. What are some ways that jams can be used by teachers and students through Google Classroom? We shared that at the beginning. Make sure in Google Classroom that you give each student their own copy, or everybody will be writing on top of each other. How can students edit? And can the teacher see who has edited? Yes, they can. When students are in, you get to see the little icons that come at the top. And if you actually click on it, it also tells you where they are and what they're working on. And how can the teacher know which students have responded? Most of the time, we ask them to put their initials on a Post-it note or with a text box or writing it down. You can see who's been working, like I said, by looking at the icon. Any other questions you have out there? We can answer them now.
I don't see any questions in the chat as of right now. There's a couple earlier and they've been answered. Awesome job, everyone. This was really great. I'm sure our teachers found this so valuable, and we'll take at least one thing back with them. It's awesome that they'll be able to have these templates already available to them, and they won't have to recreate the jams, which I think will save a lot of time, and would encourage people to use them more quickly. So awesome. So before we wrap up today, we just wanted to remind everyone, or inform everyone for the first time, that our technology conference is coming up. It is slated for, oops, I think I got ahead of myself. First, let's talk about an upcoming event. We're having a poetry reading on April, can we go back? Perfect. We're having a poetry reading on April 23rd at 1:45. So it is open to students, so we'll have some information available about how to attend that. You can also find that information on our EdTech training site at edtechtraining.palmbeachschools.org. And then lastly, our tech conference is coming up. It's October the 15th. So make sure you save the date. It's going to be awesome. The theme this year is Fast Forward, a decade of change in a year. And we're going to talk about, just what we've been going through this past year in the pandemic and all of the wonderful things that we've learned, and how we can use the things that we've learned to just make us stronger and move forward for the future. So make sure you save the date for that. And then also, as said earlier, all of these resources, this video in particular, and any of the templates and any of the resources will be available on the EdTech training site at edtechtraining.palmbeachschools.org. So be sure to check that next week. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us and we'd be happy to help. All right, ladies, any last words?
Just want to make sure that people remember jams are really easy to use, but they give you so much power because you get to see what each student is adding to the table. So remember, pump up those jams.
Awesome. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.